startups often struggle with. And one of the things I spend a lot of time working with you all on is fighting the urge to just say, well, that's Google, right? You guys, you're different. We're not Google. Well, as you'll see in this deck, Google wasn't Google when this was first adopted at Google. Google was under a year old when John Doerr came to Google and pitched Larry, Sergey, Marissa, and others on how to adopt this process at a very young and ambitious company. This really is a great book. Stephen was given really incredibly direct access to not only our founders and many early employees, but a number of people across Google that gave Stephen a very broad sense of who we are, how we worked. And he talked about how in 1999, John Doerr, who is a partner, some of you may know, at Kleiner Perkins, remains a board member for Google to this day. And he came to Google to talk about a process that he'd witnessed at Intel called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results. And Stephen, in his book, talks about, and I know that those of you on the live stream can't see this, I won't read the whole pages here, but talks about how Doerr came into Google and OKRs were an immediate hit. That unlike what you might expect, where this might be seen as some kind of Dilbertization of a tech company, instead, it was immediately apparent to Googlers that this was data, right? That what this gave the company access to was a way to quantify, instead of just qualifying, what it was they were working on and how well they were doing towards those goals, and periodically reviewing, did they meet expectations for what it was that they were trying to do. How each of these three are inherently measurable. One, finishing the presentation on time. Now, I haven't told any of you how long this workshop is going to take, so I think I have a pretty good chance of finishing on time, since only I know what on time is. Completing a sample set of 3 months' objectives and key results. So at the end of the meeting, they were going to have a set of their OKRs. 3, having management agree to institute a trial system for a 3-month period. Pretty straightforward. So John goes on to give examples of an OKR in the context of a football team. Now, I'm a big 40 grading yourselves looking backwards. Let me talk about some of the things that, less to John's bullets here, where he was trying to make the case. Let me tell you about, as a Googler who's now lived this for 5 of Google's 13 years using OKRs, what does it do? It is absolutely amazing for imposing discipline on the organization. It helps me individually understand what I'm working on and why. It also helps me make conscious decisions about what I'm not working on, which is often just as important. Make sure that by making these OKRs public, everyone on my team, anybody in the company that cares, can see exactly what I'm working on, can see what my priorities are. Why is that helpful? Well, to give you one example, when I get dinged by a team at Google who wants, let's say when I was the PM for YouTube's homepage, somebody pings me and says, hey, we would love to promo this new product on the YouTube homepage. Well, everyone would love to promo things on the YouTube homepage. The person who's going to make that pitch, it might help them to know what my priorities were for the quarter in which we were working. And they can immediately know, even before they talk to me, what my answer is likely to be. If the thing that they're promoting is somehow connected to the things that I care about for that quarter, they've got a very easy case to make. They're helping me deliver on my objective. When I was reviewed each of the last 5 years, when I would sit down and write up my summary of what I did in the year prior, what I think that means for the company, whether I wanted to go up for promotion or not, at no point in time were my quarterly OKR bullets factored into that evaluation. Now, it's always possible to just include your OKRs as part of that packet. I found individually they were always tremendously useful because it gave me really at a summary glance what I'd been up to over the last year. I could look at the last 4 quarters of OKRs. I could look at the grades. Again, we'll talk about the grading process in a little bit. And I knew really within a few minutes what were the biggest things I'd worked on, what were the most dramatic results as a byproduct of that work, and I could then summarize my contribution to the company, my impact, in a way that previously, when I thought about prior startups prior to coming to Google, it was much harder to recall back. What did I do 6, 9, 12 months ago? I mentioned this in passing at the outset. Your target team members, where we were working on complementary things, where we were working on dependent things, where there was something I was doing that I needed 3 other people to deliver something, and so by keeping track of where they were in their progress, helped me understand how likely I was to deliver on my OKRs. It fairly organically ensures the organization's tuned in to what everybody is up to. And that virtuous cycle I talked about a few slides ago, there's a wonderful, I used the word organic a minute ago, it's the best I can think of here, that just ensures that you're working on things that support what the company is focused on, as do. Before diving into I pulled some of my personal OKRs from my days when I was PM on Blogger. I've got 2 more comments here, 2 more slides. I want to talk about differentiating between the objective and the key results, and then talk a little bit about differentiating personal versus team versus company. Objectives should feel uncomfortable. Going into a quarter, you should be uncertain as to whether or not you can deliver on the thing that you've just said you will deliver. If you are certain you will nail it, you're not pushing hard enough. You're not thinking broadly enough. You're not thinking big. The key results are the things that will ensure that you deliver on the objective. They have to be quantifiable. They have to lead to you being able to objectively grade them. Right? Don't set an OKR that says, I will make Gmail better. Because in your opinion, you've made it better because you made it prettier. But if that degrades usage, it leads to user attrition, if it means people send fewer messages per minute, hour, whatever the metric is, then you have not made Gmail better. And it's impossible to objectively assess that. Don't say make it better. Make it say that you'll be able to help users respond to messages more quickly. Right? Well, that's easy. You can, and in fact, the better way to say that is, I will reduce the average time to response sent from whatever it is now by 30%. Okay, personal versus team versus company. Personal OKRs, pretty straightforward. What are you working on? What is most important to you? What are the things that at the end of the quarter you'll be able to show you did? Team OKRs are the priorities for the team, not just the bucket of all of the personal OKRs. Think about our example from John Doerr's slides of the 49ers. Personal OKRs, that's Alex Smith, Frank Gore, David Akers, Vernon Davis, Crabtree, Moss, you name it. It is each individual player has their own OKRs. And obviously those are going to be quite a bit different. The team OKRs, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, PR head, ticket sales, the new stadium person who's coordinating, the season tickets, those are the team OKRs. It is each individual player has their own OKRs. And obviously those are going to be quite a bit different. The team OKRs, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, PR head, ticket sales, the new stadium person who's coordinating, the season tickets. Those are the team OKRs. And then the company OKRs, big picture, top level focus, right? Win the Super Bowl. Might have a few others there. Secure home field advantage through the playoffs might be another company level OKR. Things that help clarify for each individual what the most critical things are to the organization as a whole. All right, as I said, we're going to look at a couple of my OKRs from my blogger days. Some helpful context before we dive into this. At the time that I took on Blogger, Blogger was the 8th largest web property in the world. Still, incidentally, in the top 10 worldwide. So that's a good trivia question. Next time you're at a bar and somebody asks, what is Google's 3rd largest web property by page view traffic, not by visitors anymore? First is obviously Google. Second, obviously YouTube. Almost no one knows that Blogger's the 3rd. I take a little bit of pride in this, as you can tell. But again, for context, Blogger was a fairly ignored product internally, fairly forgotten, at least within certainly the U.S. tech echo chamber, even though it remained this amazing, huge engine of traffic worldwide. Allocation to build it out the following quarter. So this is, again, a measurable OKR, or key result rather, in that it showed preparation work that I'd be doing in this case in Q4, so that something would get launched in Q1. Now, if I wrote the PRD entirely under my own control, whether I did or I didn't, but failed to ensure that the engineers would be on the hook for building it out in Q1, at best, I might get a 0.5 on this OKR. I would argue that far more important to get the eng allocation than it is to just write the PRD. So again, in grading this, that'll come into play when we look at grading these, and I will be grading them in just a sec. These are written to be measurable. Launching the monetize tab, well, we did. We launched. It was a fairly significant change to the overall UI. So that got a 1. Here, as I said earlier, the goal is a 0.6 or a 0.7. But if there's a very tangible binary key result, you don't give yourself a 0.7 because you never get a 1.0. In this case, I did what I said we were going to do. It was considered critical, so you get a 1. Implement AdSense host channel placement targeting to increase RPMs by X%. Well, we implemented a version of this, and it didn't have much of an impact on RPMs. So this one was a fail. Launched 3 revenue-specific experiments. We launched 3 experiments. Only 2 of them really told us anything about driving revenue growth. That was largely because the 3rd experiment that we launched that quarter that we thought would tell us something interesting about revenue really in the end didn't. So that was as much our error, my error, in not crafting the experiment more effectively. And then finally, the PRD for the ad network, wrote the PRD, was still at the end of this quarter doing some horse trading with my eng manager on which engineers would be building it out, but we were fairly agreed at the point at which we were grading these that it would get built. There was still a few open questions, so I didn't consider this a 1, but overall it was a 0.8. Now, quick note on scoring. You'll note that the 0.7 in white at the top here next to the objective is just an average of the 4 key results below. What did you learn? What did you not know when you said you would do that thing that prevented you from delivering it? Well, do you have any control over removing that obstacle in the quarter ahead? Or is it immovable? If it's immovable, go around it. Figure out, either don't focus on that objective anymore, or figure out different ways of achieving it. The scores ultimately benefit everyone in the process more by what they help you know what not to do, what to change, what to continue to do more of. Um,